Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our fourth in a 5-series library presentations for 2025. I'm Gail Bean, I'm your host today, and I'm really pleased to welcome Dawn Stover to be who is going to talk to us about host plants. I want to tell you a little bit about Dawn today. She has spent over 20 years as a research associate with Stephen F. Austin Gardens at Stephen F. Austin State University. Dawn's passion and talents for conservation and growing native plants led to her current position with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service at the East Texas Plant Materials Center in Nacogdoches, where she focuses on bringing local ecotypes of East Texas native pollinator plants to landowners of all scale. However, today Dawn is talking to us and is known as the Nectar Connector. She consults on bringing pollinator plantings back to landscapes of all scale, from backyard pollinator pockets to full-scale prairie restorations. So she's going to talk to us about all types of pollinators in the East Texas landscape, which is really very specific, and that's why it's so good, because a lot of times we hear things about Texas or, you know, even more broadly, nationally, but Dawn is going to talk to us about what we will see in our area. So not only the types, but how to attract them, and specifically on plants that serve as butterfly larval hosts. So we did have a little bit of technical difficulties, as is always the way, but thank you, Dawn, for your patience and as we sorted through that, and I hope you enjoyed her presentation. We will have questions at the end, so I ask you to hold your questions and silence your cell phones if you would. Let me do that while I'm saying it. And at the end, we really need your evaluation. It was on your chair when you came in, and we really need that to make our next presentations as successful as we can. So please fill those out, and we'll have some announcements during that time also. So without further ado, take it away, Dawn.
Well, good afternoon. I'm soft-spoken, but I feel like I can hear you hear me. So we're good to go with the microphone? Okay. So I've been crazy about butterflies and bees for a pretty good long time, but then I started getting into thinking, I want more butterflies and bees, and how do I make that happen? And so my yard is kind of a naturalistic landscape, and my goal as gardeners, I know you all know this, we are ever evolving. So way back when, you know, when I got started, I was a gingerphile. I loved all the gingers that I could grow in East Texas that were hardy for our area. And then I moved on to this and moved on to that, and this evolution has come full circle into native plants. I'm not getting out of native plants. I'm not evolving out of native plants, but I'm evolving into more native plants and growing weird things for weird things, okay? So when Greg wrote the press release for my presentation, he gave me a quote. He put words in my mouth, which is fine, because I've known Greg for a very, very long time. And he said, no worms, no wings. I really like that. I really like that. And so I think I'm going to make that into a Nectar Connector t-shirt. So when I get my business up and running and I have merch, you can buy t-shirts for me to say that. And I'll have a little play on that in a little bit that we'll talk about. But before we dive into our larvae, our butterfly larvae, let's talk a little bit about pollinators and how we need to focus on the big picture rather than just the teeny tiny picture. I'm not going to garden just for a particular type of swallowtail or just for a monarch. I'm going to garden for all of the things, the good and the bad. So I know that if y'all have seen me present on native plants and butterflies and bees and things like that, I asked this question. So if you've seen this slide before, don't answer. Okay, how many bees are in this photo?
2?
Maybe 2, 3, 4. I have the right answer over here with this gentleman in the glasses, 0. There's 0 butterflies in there. Or, excuse me, 0 bees in there. These are all flies. Do you know why we like flies? They're all flies. There may be a wasp up there, but by and large, they're all flies. Do you know why we like flies? They pollinate chocolate. That's why we like flies. Also strawberries too. They're very effective at pollinating strawberries. So strawberries and chocolate go hand in hand. So we have to learn to appreciate flies. Let's talk a little bit about some of our pollinators, in addition to the butterflies that we'll get to eventually. Most of our bees here that are native are solitary bees, and these are bees that don't make nests. And because they are solitary, do you know what they don't do? They don't sting. They do not have a nest to defend, so they don't have a mechanism to defend the nest that they don't have. So these are things that, like your carpenter bees or your little solitary bees that will nest in pithy stems, like silphium, things like that. That's why we preach not to cut things down in the fall, because those little guys are nesting in those types of areas. That's why we make the bee hotels with all those little tubes. That is for our solitary bees that are really wonderful. They pollinate a lot of things like squash and cucumbers and all those really good cucurbits that we really like to eat. They're really important for that. And then our other bees are our social bees. And we only have 2 types of social bees, and that's the bumblebee and that's the honeybee. And bumblebees actually do make honey, but they don't make a lot of it, and it's not as tasty as the honeybee. Now the honeybee is not native to Texas or the United States or North America, period. They are European, so they are introduced. I don't garden for honeybees. They come into my yard and I say, oh, welcome, have a nice day. But I don't specifically garden for them. I do garden for bumblebees because I love bumblebees. They're so fun to watch. Now we have there's 9 bumblebees that are native to the state of Texas, and we have 3 that are actually native to East Texas. And this big fella over here, let's see if my pointer works, yeah, that is an American bumblebee. And that's kind of the typical bumblebee that we think of here. And I know it's a guy. Do you know how I know it's a male? He doesn't have a big old yellow pollen sac on his back legs. Let me see if one of my other bees has it. I think, nope, up here. So you see how this little longhorn bee, right up here, has a little yellow on her hind leg? That is where she collects the pollens. And males do not collect pollens, so they don't have that big yellow sac on their hind legs. And so that's how you differentiate between male and female. Males can't sting you. Did you know that? Yep. They don't have, the stinger is kind of in relation with their ovipositor, the egg-laying mechanism of the bee. Male bees don't lay eggs, so they don't have a stinger. And moths. I mean, how gorgeous are moths? This is my next evolution into gardening, is gardening for moths. Like, who knew? I mean, but when you have these big giant Polyphemus moths, I have my work is actually out surrounded by national forests, so we have a lot of wildlife. And when I go to my greenhouse, about this time of year, it's just covered with these Polyphemus and Luna moths. And they're really cool. It's really neat. So there's lots of different beautiful types of moths. We all think that moths are bad, that, you know, they lay eggs in your clothes and they eat your clothes and they eat your pantry and all that kind of stuff, but there's really some pretty wonderful stuff. Moth caterpillars feed a lot of birds too, so we have to remember that. Did y'all ever figure that beetles would be pollinators? Yeah, they are pollinators. They're kind of prehistoric pollinators. They're what we call mess and soil pollinators. And so, excuse me, what they do is they eat around on the flowers, and as they defecate, as they poop, they pick up the pollen in that on their legs, and so they carry it from flower to flower. They're probably not necessarily pollinating these milkweeds up here. I find that's kind of the singles scene for the beetles. That's where they come to meet. I have a lot of beetle love when I photograph these little. This is a red ring milkweed right here. That's hard to say. Beetles are very amorous creatures. At least when I take pictures of them, they seem to be. And then of course we come to our flies. Now butterflies, by and large, are not great pollinators. And they're not great pollinators because they don't have a lot of fur or hair. But guess what flies have? They have a lot of fur and furry hair. And so they're able to pick up a lot of that pollen and carry it from flower to flower. So they're very, very, next to bees, they're the next most effective pollinator we have. Excuse me. And so we come to wasps. And wasps are also not great pollinators. They do some incidental pollination. They are wonderful predators, protectors of our natural world. They're going to take care of all those really bad bugs that we have, the aphids and all the things that are not good that we want to eradicate in our garden. If you build it, they will come. If you build it, your ecosystem will become healthy. And I'll show you a picture at the end of the presentation that you'll go like, let me plant more flowers. So this is basically a talk to give you permission to go plant more flowers. So in order to have a good, healthy pollinator habitat, the Xerces Society provides these four guidelines here. So one, you provide forage. What did I just say? Plant more flowers. I'm giving you permission to go to the nursery today and buy more flowers. Provide habitat. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bee hotel like this thing up here. It could be a native bunch grass like little blue stem. That's really great habitat. Little bare patches of bare soil for those solitary bees to kind of nest in the ground. It doesn't have to be really fancy and cool and cutesy and Pinterest worthy like the bee hotels. We just got to plant more plants. Sorry, that's the answer. Plants are the answer. And then avoid pesticides if you can. Like I said, if you balance everything, if you have a very robust floral buffet, you're going to keep those really good beneficial insects to help keep those pest populations down. If you have to, if you have to use pesticides, use it judiciously. If you have to use something systemic, like we're in azalea country and we get azalea lace bugs, let's apply that systemic pesticide after the plants bloom. And then we're good to go. So just be judicious with what you're using if you have to use it. And if it's causing economic damage, then that's going to drive your decision for that. So I like Doug Tallamy's thought, if you see a leaf with a hole in it, take 10 steps back. Can you see that hole? Big picture, it's green, it's lovely, whatever. There's just really good, stuff going on in that ecosystem. And of course, spread the word. Here I am here to you, spread the word. You take this message and you take it to all your neighbors and all of your, all the people that call the Master Gardeners and want those questions answered. So, in a few little easy steps here, what do we do to create a great pollinator habitat? So try to group things at least 3 feet in diameter. So have good, solid, clumps of color. We want a minimum of 10 different species. And I really like the Katy Prairie Conservancy's, they have a thing called 9 natives. So if you just start there, 9 natives, 3 natives that bloom in spring, 3 that bloom in summer, and 3 that bloom in fall, then you've kind of got that buffet going. So I'm telling you to start there and plant more plants. Go to the nursery today, buy more plants. So plant at least 9 different species that bloom in different seasons. And I put 10 in there because you need host plants. And I'm going to give you a big old laundry list of host plants shortly. Plant a sequence of blooms. So we want things that, of course, bloom at different times. We want different shapes. We want different colors because different types of pollinators will utilize different shapes of flowers. And we really want to emphasize that early season forage. What does that mean? That means having flowers early in the year for those things that are emerging from hibernation. They need that energy to get up and go. We need that cup of coffee in the morning. These guys need a big dose of nectar to get up and go and do what they do. And then I'm going to touch on this too. Late season nectar is so important for our migrating and our hibernating pollinators. So we should be the Buc-ee's of nectar in fall. So a few things here. Early season flowers, we've kind of gotten past early season. You know, most of the world is like, oh, let's have No-Mow May. Well, we do that in February. Like, it's No-Mow February because we're all way past that. We're already into spring flowers. So one of my very favorites is this middle one right here, is the Rose Vervain. We used to call that verbena, but it got reclassified, so it's Rose Vervain now. This is a native species, the Glandularia canadensis. And just when those big old swallowtail butterflies are emerging from hibernation, these are blooming, and I always see them nectaring on this particular plant, as do I on the prairie phlox. These are just now finishing up, and the self-heal are really showing out right now in my area. Redbuds they came and went this year, so did the dogwoods. They were one and done for those guys. And now we're moving into kind of later spring. So the lance-leaf coreopsis, the yellow tick seeds, we see these on the side of the road. They're really showing out right now. And the penstemon, we have 2 or 3 penstemon that work well in East Texas. Those big old penstemons with the big giant flowers you see in all the nursery catalogs don't grow here. Sorry. But we have the nodding penstemon and the penstemon digitalis, which both do very, very well here. And then here's the coneflower. So this is actually my very favorite coneflower. This is the sanguine coneflower, and did y'all know that's really the only coneflower that's native to our area? Yeah. So purple coneflower, everybody just jumps on the purple coneflower bandwagon. We love purple coneflower, it's native. How many counties in the state of Texas, there's 254 counties, how many counties is purple coneflower native to?
10?
One. So that's what I do. I'm championing the things that are regional and are appropriate to our area and that grow for us because they like heat and humidity because that's what they were designed for. Mealy cup sage, of course, we all know Greg's Henry Dulberg sage. I absolutely love them. I'll always have monarchs nectaring on that one in the fall. It's a great plant. The false indigos and then the Stokes aster. The false indigos are really cool. I always see bumblebees on there. They're very complicated and heavy flowers, and it takes the weight of that bee to open it up to get that really good sweet reward. And then moving into summer, I'm expecting to start seeing some of these right now. I know my blanket flowers are starting to bloom. Monarda, the wild bergamot, I think that's lovely. It's a great cut flower too. Summer phloxes, this is actually Greg Rant's introduction of John Fanick. And then of course the rudbeckias, the coneflowers, the rosin weeds, I mentioned that for habitat for the solitary bees. Those stems are big and hollow, and so those little solitary bees will lay their eggs in there. And of course lantana. Moving into late summer and fall, we have the blazing stars. We have a number of species of blazing stars native to East Texas. You see my little American bumblebee right there. Joe Pyeweed is pretty cool, and that's a big plant. It makes an exclamation in your landscape because it's a very, very tall plant. So if you need something to the back of the border that grows to like 12 feet tall, that's your animal right there. And then of course ironweeds. Some of the ironweeds are a little friendly. They like to reseed everywhere. I really like the Texas ironweed or Vernonia texana. That's a real low growing one, and it has a little opacity to it. So if it does reseed itself, it's not eating everything in the landscape. And then the pitcher sage, we do have this native to East Texas. And then the blue mist flower, we have the East Texas blue mist flower, Conoclinium celestinum, and the Greg's mist flower, which is native further west of here. So they both do well here. This one actually prefers a moist, wetter, kind of wet situation, and the Greg's mist flower likes really dry, well-drained soils. And they're both fairly aggressive. The Greg's mist flower is much more so than the blue mist flower. And of course the cardinal flower. who doesn't like to have a hummingbird come nectar on your cardinal flower in the fall? This is a great plant for hummingbirds and butterflies. And late season, you know, y'all, I said we need to be the Becky's of nectar for pollinators in the fall, and this is where it's going to come from. It's going to come from our asters and our goldenrods. Our goldenrods are very, very important. Are y'all all on board with the fact that goldenrods don't cause your allergies? Yep. Okay, so I'm preaching to the choir. I've been preaching this a long time, and I like to see those heads nod that yes, we know that goldenrods pollen is too heavy to fly up our nose unless the pollinator takes it and pulls it off the plant and flies up our nose. So the ragweed that we don't see, that's the culprit. That horrible thing, and it is wind pollinated, and that's why it comes and gets those pits and snorts. Frostweed, I love this plant. When I back in my career at SFA, when I ran that SFA Gardens plant sale, we'd go out to the nursery and see all the pollinators visiting all the plants before we put them out for you guys to buy at the sale. And we would go outside every day with a frostweed, and there would be a different pollinator every day. So how many of y'all use iNaturalist? It's a fantastic app. It's free. And so I would go out there every day on iNaturalist and take a picture of a pollinator. And when you pull up my dashboard, like I have a whole section of nothing but bugs on frostweed. And so it's really cool. I like this in appropriate situations. I put it in my garden, and I'm not loving it in my garden. It really likes to reseed. So just know that. Just put that, put that in that little feather in your cap, knowing that it's an excellent pollinator flower, but it's friendly. It'll go everywhere. But it does make the frost ribbons. Have y'all seen the frost ribbons that they make? That is super cool. So when you have a day that it freezes, all the moisture will come down the stem and kind of make it looks like ribbon candy. It's really neat. So it's worth it to grow for that. What I do now at this point in time is I just cut the seed heads off before they go seed out into my garden. And we need shelter. So this is kind of up to your interpretation, but our native bunch grasses are excellent at providing shelter. A lot of times we'll find bumblebee nests on an old bunch of something like little blue stem that's kind of fallen over for the year, and they'll kind of make their nest in that little cavity underneath that. Shrubs and trees, those are good shelter areas too. Something to block the wind, something for them to somewhere to go to sleep. So we have to have a buffet. What does that mean? Buy more plants. Okay, let's talk. How do I do that? I can't chew gum and walk at the same time, so I'm double fisting here with the clicker and the microphone. So let's get on to butterflies, because that's really what we want to talk about today. So Greg said no worms, no wings, and that's very, very true. If we don't have worms, we don't have butterflies. If we don't have worms, we don't have food for birds. So there's a lot of implication to what those words that he put in my mouth. But you guys, you have to know your worms to know the wings that you're going to get. And so these are, every single one of those are my hand. I'm not scared to touch most of the worms, at least at this point in my life. Don't ask me about snakes, I won't pick those up. And I do have a caterpillar relocation program, and so I know any of y'all that may garden for butterflies, if they eat all your milkweed, you're going to go move them over to the other milkweed. And I did that yesterday out in the forest. So they like to eat all my pipevine. Pipevine swallowtails are voracious. They're heavy egg layers, and so you've got lots and lots of worms. But I do move them from plant to plant. So I don't raise butterflies. I don't keep them captive. I don't do any of that. But I just give them the buffet and say, go forth and prosper. So I'm going to tell you, every butterfly that comes up here, I'm going to tell you that it's my favorite butterfly. So just know that. But they're all my favorite butterflies. But this is one of my very favorite butterflies. I love how, and that's the transition. And I'm sorry, I lost that in my technology snafu up here. So you're used to seeing that big yellow and black butterfly. But this one in the front picture, that's black. right? So that must be a different butterfly. It's actually not. It's actually a female. Sometimes they have that dark form. And if you look at it up against the light, you can actually see the tiger stripes through those wings, and that's the best way to identify that particular one. This little caterpillar, would y'all pick that up and move it around? It looks kind of gross looking. But it is what it is. But that's where we have to know our worms to know that we get this butterfly, right? So it's important to get to know those little ugly little things. I think they're precious, to be honest with you. But how am I going to get that butterfly into my yard? Well, I'm going to plant a tulip tree. I'm going to plant a sweet bay magnolia. I mean, I'm telling you to plant some really cool stuff, right? Did you know that these things were going to attract those butterflies to lay eggs on there? I never in my life thought I'd be in front of a crowd saying, black cherries are awesome. Because we usually pull those out of our landscape and just get rid of them, and they reseed everywhere, but they are a host to a whole bunch of butterflies, including the tiger swallowtail.
Is that a cherry laurel?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I didn't realize this. A lot of our caterpillars, well, they all have defense mechanisms of some sort or the other. Would you eat a piece of poop? Well, birds don't want to eat a piece of poop either. So this is their defense mechanism. And I've actually learned that most of the other swallowtails, when they are very young, their very first instars, when the caterpillars are teeny tiny, they actually do have that defense mechanism. So a lot of them actually do look like poop to begin with. This one just carries it on through the rest of the slide. This is the giant swallowtail. These are big butterflies. I see them regularly, but I don't see them in great numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant all the plants to encourage them in my yard. So we're looking at the common hop tree, the Hercules club, the tingleton. Y'all know that tree where you take some of the bark and eat it and it makes your mouth numb. And then citrus. Do I buy citrus because I know I'm going to get a bumper crop of satsumas here in East Texas? No, I might get two. Down in Houston, we might do a better job of getting, hardier citrus, but I'm going to grow citrus so that I can grow butterflies. I'm going to let the worms eat my citrus trees, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to tell you this is my favorite butterfly, and I'm going to tell you that it's 5 more times, but I just really love the spicebush swallowtails. My favorite color is blue, and I just love the blue accents, the little dots, and this big sweep of blue right here. I love that color. In person, it's unreal how pretty it is. And these little guys, I mean, it's kind of scary looking, but it's really kind of cute too. So these are not easy to find in the nurseries. It's not impossible. I know that there's a wholesale nursery out in Warren, Texas that sells spicebush. So, and they do sell to retail people here in East Texas. So ask your independent garden center to get you some spicebush. And I've planted 5 of them, and I can't keep them in foliage. I'm going to have to start netting them because the butterflies just devour them. And I'm okay with that. That's what I'm going for. And I can't, if they eat all the leaves, what am I going to do? I'm going to have the Dawn Stover Caterpillar Relocation Program, and I'm going to move them to sassafras because that's another one of their hosts. And also the Sweet Bay Magnolia. Y'all know what southern magnolias smell like, right? We drove through town and there's southern mags everywhere. Do y'all know what Sweet Bay smell like? They're heavenly. They're not as heavy as the fragrance of a southern magnolia. They're a little bit more citrusy and lighter. They're just divine, and so they're really great plants, and the butterflies eat them. So there you go. And that's why we don't need to use pesticides. Somebody's eating that, and maybe that's a pretty good thing that's eating that. So we have to keep that in mind when we see a little insect damage. Did you get that picture? Do you need that? Good? Okay. All right. No joke. It's my favorite butterfly. So it's actually, Greg and I both really this is probably both our favorite butterflies. The zebra swallowtail, and I, growing up in the Houston area, these don't occur down south. They're just up here, and so they're really, really pretty, and they're just, I don't know. I mean, look how cool that is. Even the body is zebra striped. That's a pretty cool little butterfly, and they're drawing pawpaws. How many of y'all have a pawpaw in your yard? Oh my goodness, I see some hands. That's awesome. I don't grow pawpaws because I want the fruit. The fruit's okay. It tastes like a banana, but not quite as good. And if you ask anybody, they will always add that qualifier to it, like a banana, but not quite as good. I grow it because I want this caterpillar. Now, I don't have this butterfly at my house. I'm working on getting pawpaw into my yard, and I actually had a friend that gave me some larvae the other day. So I'm hoping to establish a population in my yard. And for certain, this is on my bucket list right here. I have never, ever seen a caterpillar of a zebra swallowtail. Never, ever. And so I put it out to the Facebook gods. I said, I need a photo. And one of my friends is good friends with a retired forest entomologist, and he was so kind as to share like thousands of pictures. But I'm going to have to do another presentation on moths because he kind of gave me a whole bunch of moth pictures. So anyway, so thanks to Joe Pace for this beautiful caterpillar photo. So these are really prolific. I'm going to say they're my favorite yard butterfly because they're super easy to grow. They're super easy for kids to play with and to encourage with. This is the eastern black swallowtail butterfly. Remember the spice bush had blue dots. These have kind of yellow dots on their outer wings, and they have this little eye right here. These feed on very, very easy things, not just natives. They feed on a lot of things in our landscape. So I love the Texas prairie parsley. These are starting to bloom on the roadsides right now. So if you see something that's about 3 foot tall with kind of that yellowish green flower, that's what this is. And this is a great native host plant for the black swallowtail. But so are a lot of our garden things. So anything in the carrot family, rue is not in the carrot family, but anything else in the carrot family like parsley or fennel, I plant that for worms. I buy parsley from the grocery store, so I know I'm not eating caterpillars or butterfly eggs. So all of those things are really good. I do tend to leave some carrots in the garden long after they should have been pulled, because if they eat all my parsley, I have to translocate those caterpillars somewhere. So they'll eat your carrot tops too. And this is the pipevine swallowtail, and you can tell this guy. You see how it has that kind of smear of really iridescent, kind of darker blue. That's how you tell the pipevine swallowtail, and they are really cool caterpillars. That's kind of a scary looking caterpillar, isn't it? But they're just as gentle as can be. There's no pokes, there's no spines, there's nothing. They're really fun to just kind of play around with. So the easiest pipevine to grow is the white veined Dutchman's pipe. That is not native to the United States, but it is okay for these caterpillars. Some of the tropical pipevines are actually, they have too much of the toxic ingredient in them, and it poisons the butterfly. So we kind of try to stay away from those real big, like pelican flowers. Y'all seen those big, sort of offensive almost pipevines. We kind of want to stay away from those. But this is the only non-native here that is acceptable for our caterpillars. And so one of our natives is the woolly Dutchman's pipe. That's kind of hard to come by, but it's it's becoming more prevalent in their nurseries. Keep asking for it and people will start growing it. And there's two natives that you'll probably never ever see in the nursery, but if you see them out in the woods, you kind of know what they're doing. This is a beautiful butterfly. I want to say it's my favorite butterfly, but more often than not, I see it on dead things and dog poop. I really think I've said the word poop a lot in this talk today, and I'm really sorry for that, but there it is. There are worse words I think I could say. But then this is exactly what's happening right there. There's a pile of poop. But it's a really big butterfly, and it's a little, you can tell when you walk up to it that it's not a swallowtail. It's just a little bit different, but they're really spectacular. So this one's on something that's dead, and what they're doing in that is they're absorbing minerals from those materials. It's helpful for reproduction and things like that. So it is what it is. And the little caterpillars, they're not pretty either. But here we are again with the black cherry, with the cherry laurel. Did you know that that was a host plant for the red-spotted purple? I did not know that until I was well into my 5th decade. I mean, come on here. So I'm going to love the cherry laurels. I just have to, because I want these butterflies. But they also lay their eggs on the wild plums and also the hawthorns. We can think of the parsley hawthorn and mayhaws. We all know this butterfly. This is the Gulf fritillary, and so these host specifically on passion vines. The native passion vines are a little bit better. This is a very common cultivar called incense, and if you put an incense, which is a hybrid, and if you put an incense right next to a passion vine that you would find out in the field while it runs somewhere, 9.5 times out of 10 they're going to be on the wild one. So just know that. But if you only have the incense, they will lay their eggs on them. And then the variegated fritillary. This is a really cool, it's kind of a kissing cousin to the other one. They lay their eggs on mayaples. And also the wild violets, and they also utilize the passion vines as their host plants as well. Sulfurs, these little critters they're hard to take pictures of because they're so flitty and fast, but they're really pretty. I didn't love partridge pea. I thought it's a little, that little native thing that grows out in the woods, and I don't love it. But look how many butterflies host on the partridge pea. Yeah. And I talked to somebody about wildlife. This is a great plant that makes nice big seeds for things like quail and turkey. So I'm starting to love this little, not so showy little thing that grows out in the woods. It's a pretty cool plant. But they also like some of the sennas and the cassias. So you can go ahead and plant your little popcorn trees. And then the southern dogface, they will host on some of our legumes, some of the lead plants, and the prairie clover. So I'm going to have to talk real loud. Y'all hear me? Okay. So the common buckeye, really, this is a sweet little butterfly. It kind of flips along the ground, and it's really hard to take pictures of too because they're so fast. But the false foxgloves, have y'all seen these in the wild and the roadsides? Yep. The false foxgloves bloom in the fall, and then the wild petunia. This is not the petunia that you usually find in the nurseries. It's we have several different species that do well in the garden. So I never thought I would say, hey, don't pull that cudweed in your garden. Y'all know what cudweed looks like? I know you do. This is a really bad picture of it, but it's that kind of little, it grows about this tall, it's real silvery, and has kind of a whitish, not even flower, but the seed heads are from. It's not, we pull cudweed all the time in our gardens. But it is a host plant for the American lady. So I didn't know that, so I'm going to appreciate it. I mean, I might not keep it in my garden proper, but I'll let it live on the forever. And there's a plant here called the Parlin's Pussy Toes, which is I think, I don't want to say that it's utilized or underutilized because it's not in the nursery trade. It should be. It makes a wonderful ground cover for semi-shady areas. And so look for that one, start asking for that one, and maybe our growers will start growing. And maybe the nectar connector will start growing too. And the silvery checker spots. These are fun little butterflies too. They're real prevalent in the fall because their host plants are in the aster family. So any of the, this is a swamp sunflower, Cunianthus, the true aster, Rudbeckia, even our frostweed that is obnoxious and annoying and whatnot. These are all
And then there's the long-tailed skippers. Have y'all seen these? They're very unusual. They're really pretty, but they like the lagoons too. So that's why we plant our native wisteria, butterfly peas, and then the tick tree balls. We all know the tick tree balls because those are, when we're walking through the woods in the fall, when you come out and plants are cut with those little seed ticks. That's what it is. And then the common checkered skipper. These are really pretty too. They're real teeny tiny, and again, I only see them in the fall. So they will host on things in the mallow family. So your hibiscus, your Chinese lanterns, your althea, your hollyhocks. It will host on all of those. And the hair streaks are fun too. The hair streaks are really cool. When they start to nectar, their wings will actually go back and forth, and that's a really fun thing to watch. And so they also will feed on the legumes, bluebonnets. Thank you.
My voice is back. There we go. So they'll feed on legumes, all the little beans, the partridge peas, the garden beans and peas. You have to, when you're growing vegetables, you have to decide where your economic damage threshold is. If you're growing tomatoes, do you want to grow it for the worms? Because you're going to have tomato hornworms, or do you want to grow it for tomatoes? Well, I want tomatoes if I'm planting tomatoes, so the worms get fed to the fish. The perch really like to eat those. I hate to say that. One year, I walked out into my vegetable garden and my tomato plants were naked. And I thought, oh Lord, I had a deer come in my yard and just eat it back to the stems. No, it was caterpillars, and they did it overnight. So maybe I'll plant an extra bed for the caterpillars and relocate them there next year. Maybe I'll be more sympathetic. I don't know. Okay, these are really cool. The question mark, the hackberry emperor, these are just really neat little butterflies. Who goes out of the way to plant a hackberry or sugarberry in their yard? No, I wouldn't either. No, but you know what? It's got a really cool butterfly that hosts on it. So we have to sort of learn to appreciate things that we may not have been appreciating in the past because they're doing some really good things. I am that nerd that when I walk into the garden center and I look at a plant, I ask that plant what it's going to do for my wildlife. That is the first question I ask, because I'm glad that it's pretty, and I have a little bit of my yard that's really pretty, but what's pretty to me is the life that my landscape brings. So that's the winged creatures and the creepy crawlies and all those kind of good things. And you know, I don't get so freaked out when there's snakes in my yard. I don't pet them, but you know, but they're there and they're serving their role in my landscape. Here's that old black cherry again, that old cherry laurel. So these are the butterflies that it hosts. So coral hair streak, Henry's elfin, red spotted purple, spring azure, striped hair streak, tiger swallowtail, and viceroy. So that's a lot of butterflies, and that doesn't even scratch the surface of the moth caterpillars that it may host. That's my that'll be my talk next year, or moths. So sassafras. We don't get Palomino swallowtail up this far north, but down in southeast Texas, they're fairly common. So also the spicebush swallowtail and the eastern tiger swallowtail. Oh, I didn't know frog fruit was a host plant, but it is. How about that? How many of y'all are growing frog fruit as a ground cover? It's an excellent ground cover. It's tough as nails. It'll take a little bit of shade. It'll take a lot of sun, and it'll take a whole bunch of abuse. So it's an excellent, excellent plant. So somebody asked me on Facebook, social media, Facebook is going to be the death of us all, at least our brain cells. But somebody, one of my friends posted a picture of that creeping thyme that people want to use as their yard substitutes, which does not work in Texas. And she said, well, what's the alternative? And I had to think. It took me a couple of days to think about it. This is it. There you go. If you want to get rid of your lawn, grow frog fruit. So it hosts the white peacock, common buckeye, and the fan crescent. And this is a non-native. This is probably the only non-native that I'll ever put in a slideshow and show you guys, but the white clovers do a fair job of hosting lots of different butterflies too. The common sulfur, or orange sulfur, the dog face, eastern tailed blue, fairy yellow, gray hair streak, and the northern cloudy wing. Crab apples. How many of y'all have crab apples? Not many of us. That's a really great native tree. It's a really beautiful spring bloomer. The fruit, the crab apples are kind of tart and sour, but I like that. They would make good pie, or I don't know, good something. But it's a host for the gray hair streak, the spring azure, red spotted purple, viceroy, and eastern tiger swallowtail. So that's a pretty good host plant to have if you want to kind of have a one-stop shop. Plant a crab apple. And then oaks. So, how many of y'all have read The Nature of Oaks by Doug Tallamy? I haven't read it yet, but you've read part of it. The oaks are like the keystone species for all of life because they host all of these butterflies right here and close to 1,000 species of moths and other butterflies. And that's really important. Caterpillars are of course, the photosynthetic material in plants, the leaves and things like that, is the basic building block of all the things. And then it goes up to caterpillars, and caterpillars feed the world, basically. Why do we have bird decline? Because we're killing our caterpillars, because they're eating our plants and we're spraying them because there's holes in our plants. Well, stop doing that. Take 10 steps back and go about your business. Okay, we've got to talk. This is my soapbox, and I think we're going to end on the monarch. If you come to my talk in June, I believe I'm giving a talk at the Cotton Building for Greg. I'm going to kind of heavily focus on monarchs. It's going to be a lot of this pollinator thing, but I'm going to heavily focus on monarchs and what we can do to save them. And the queens, we have to talk about the queens too, because they're kissing cousins. You can see the genus of both are Danaus, so they are very much kissing cousins. How do you tell the difference between a monarch caterpillar and a queen caterpillar? So the queens have a third, I can't remember what these are called, but a third set of these guys right here, and the monarchs only have two. The coloration is a whole lot different, but sometimes when you see them in the landscape, you have to question a little bit, but when you see that middle section, you have a queen. And those, by the most part, will feed on milkweeds. And here are the native milkweeds for East Texas. And you don't see a lot of native milkweeds in the nursery because they are really hard to grow. I spent 25 years of my life as a grower, and milkweeds were the thorn in my side. I will tell you that this aquatic Asclepias perennis is super easy to grow. It doesn't have any dormancy requirements. We don't have to stratify it. We can just plant the seeds and walk away. All the other ones have a dormancy requirement. We need to put it in cold, moist stratification in the refrigerator for X number of months and this, that, and the other. And then we get to watch them die when we transplant them. So there's a whole mycorrhizal association. If you have ever used Promix, which is a potting soil with mycorrhiza, that's what you plant your milkweed seedlings in so that they survive. Promix is the brand name. Not, I think there are Microlife as the product where you can actually add the mycorrhiza to your potting soil, so you can add that in. But that's very that fungal association is very important in the establishment of native milkweed, with the exception of A. perennis, because you can kind of grow that anywhere. And here's my soapbox. Do not plant tropical milkweed. Just don't do it. Just walk away. This is so easy to grow, and it's so pretty, and it's so showy, and it's all, let's take the easy road. Well, this is probably one of the worst things that we can do for monarchs. In addition to, y'all have heard of OE, the parasite, it's not a parasite.
Disease?
No, I can't think of it right now, but it's the organism that affects the monarchs. And it can overwinter on the tropical milkweed. There is a lot of evidence beyond that the type of the cardiac glycosides that are in that plant are the wrong strength. So it builds a different metabolic butterfly than what we need. So the wings are not the right size, the body's not the right size. It's just really bad. If you want to go down a big old rabbit hole, follow Dr. Andy Davis. He's got some really good scientific research behind all this. He is with the University of Georgia, and his focus for years has been specifically the monarch butterfly. So don't plant this. There's a whole lot of reasons not to do it. We're going to figure out how to get those native milkweeds more prevalently into your homes and landscapes. We're going to start with the aquatic milkweed. We're also going to start with the swamp milkweed. Yeah, it's not native to our area. It's native to the adjacent to us, but it does grow very, very well here, and it's very easy. So yeah, that one's okay. Yeah, I see some worry there. No, that one's okay. That one's good. But remember what I said. We don't need to be thinking about milkweed in the fall, because the butterflies, when they're coming back through Texas, do not need to lay eggs. That is not what we need to do. And that is one of the things, that was one of the other things that the tropical milkweed encourages. It encourages those butterflies to come out of the diapause. So they're holding back the reproductive part of their life cycle, and there's something in here that encourages that to happen. So we don't want them to lay eggs here. They need to go all the way to Mexico and live in Mexico a really long time and then fly back and lay eggs in the spring. So that's why we need to be the buckies of nectar for the hibernating and migrating pollinators. So we need to provide that fuel to get them where they need to go. And this is a swamp sunflower. This is actually in my field at work. This is one of the plants that we developed, and it blooms just in time for the monarch migration. So plant more plants, plant all the flowers, plant seasonality, different shapes, different sizes, different colors, and you'll be all the better for it. So there's a super publication of the milkweeds of Texas that's put out by Texas Parks and Wildlife. This is a free PDF, and it will go through all of the milkweeds that are native all across Texas. We are not West Texas. We are not North Texas. We might be Western Louisiana, but so just know that. But they do include range maps for each of those species, so you can see where that particular milkweed occurs in Texas. And this thing is this is a textbook. This is a pretty amazing thing. I wanted to write something like this, and then I found out it was already written, so I couldn't do it. But it goes through a whole bunch of pollinator plants for East Texas, Western Louisiana that are really great, not only for monarch butterflies, but for all of our pollinators. So it's a really good free resource. I love QR codes. And I told y'all, if you build it, they will come. So this is at my old job when I was working at Stephen F. Austin. This is the green milkweed, and we know milkweeds are going to have. I don't go to the store and buy milkweed unless I see an oleander aphid on it. If I don't see an oleander aphid on it, I know that it's been sprayed with pesticide and probably something systemic. So I'm okay with the bugs. I'm good with that. But this is the green milkweed. We're out in the landscape over by the Conservation Education Building, where we have a lot of different flowering perennials. Lots of if there's bare ground, I'm going to put a flower in it. So there's a lot of ecosystem in this landscape. And so what we have here is, of course, there's a lot of oleander aphids. But what do you see right there? That little thing. It's not a ladybug. It's not. It's a fly. So that's why we love flies. It's actually a syrphid fly larva. It's a very teeny tiny fly. But these are voracious feeders on aphids. And so we see, this is within 1 week. And so I came back a couple days later, and we actually do have ladybug on here. I don't think I've seen any lacewing on here, but there's the ladybug, and there's also syrphid fly larva. The end of the week, there's not an oleander aphid on there. So if you build it, they will come. If you step back and let nature take its course, it's going to do it for you. So just plant more plants. Plant all the flowers. I give you carte blanche to do that. So one day, this will actually see me as the nectar connector. So I actually don't own, there's something trademarked in here that I don't own yet, so don't use that. And I think I have time for questions. Second back?
On the Asclepias, if you plant the tropical, do they come anyway to it and then they're doing the wrong thing?
Yes, they will come to the tropical
Okay.
for sure. And we're going to plant the tropical because it's easy. And the nursery people said it's easy.
Well,
And the nursery people will sell it to Lowe's as butterfly milkweed
Yeah.
and label it as butterfly milkweed, and it's not. So just know that too.
One other thing.
Yeah.
I bought a flat of frog fruit at Plants of Texas. Everybody in the room go to Plants of Texas and tell them you want it. And that way they'll have it.
So did y'all hear that? And I hands down love Plants of Texas because he was one of my student workers.
Yeah.
The son Brian was a long time ago in SFA. So go to Plants of Texas, demand frog fruit and native milkweed. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
You gave us a lot of great suggestions for native plants. Where do we find them?
Where do you find them? That's a good question. The easiest place to find them is probably the SFA Gardens plant sales that are twice a year. There's a really great place that's online called Almost Eden Plant Farm. They are mail order. They are out of Maryville, Louisiana. And they have started opening back up the nursery for open days. And so if you have a chance to do that, go there. And so the native plants are there, you just have to start asking for them. So I would look to your independent garden centers like Plants of Texas that aren't beholden to whatever the big box stores have to order in, and just start asking. And the more of you that ask for it, the more they will care.
I think the only nice nursery is Bob Wells or Sorelli Farms in Mineola.
Mineola, okay. Almost Eden Plant Farm. Okay. And there was a question over here.
Oh, I was just going to mention, if you go to the Native Plant Society website and look up nice plant food, and it does show Bob Wells.
Bob Wells.
as the local.
Okay, good deal. One day when I'm the nectar connector, I'll have all of that business too, in my spare time. As I jet off to see my kid in college today, so. Any other questions? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Is that Rose King, Vervain, a native?
Rose King is a hybrid, and it does fine. I actually have Rose King planted right next to a cultivar of the native one, Kathy's Candy, and the butterfly's nectar on both of them. Yes, ma'am.
Can you refer to citrus plants? That includes
Mm-hmm.
the thorns?
Yep. Yep. Yes, sir.
Usually they have like a 3-foot diameter for the, is that mostly, I mean, we're buying the small little plant and we don't really know how big it's going to be when it's, you mean it's sort of develop a shorter diameter, or do you prefer to plant in drifts?
I prefer to plant in drifts that provide at least 3 feet of color per drift. Now, I'm a little bit more naturalistic than most people are, but I will make sure that my drifts of color that repeat are at least 3 feet in diameter. And so it could be like that Joe Pye weed I showed. You only need one of those because that's 8 feet. So you just, I mean, you have to know your plants too. But you can always plant more plants.